Welcome. This is Camille Grant here from Mayfield, and just thrilled and honored to again have another amazing guest presenter today in our podcast series. The podcast series we're calling the CXO Journey to the AI Future. And so today I'm just really pleased to have Monica here, who I've got to know over the past few months. You've been part of various events we've been part of, and you've been sharing your experience with us. Monica is the CTO at Dodge Cox here in San Francisco, Northern California. Not one of these East Coast based relationships, but actually a West Coast based asset management firm. Dodge Cox, amazing firm, mid-market asset manager, been around since 1930, as you said. Obviously, your
Right.
performance in the funds market has always been top tier. It was interesting, as you said as we were talking before, that you don't even have a sales team, that performance matters and drives the business. So maybe, Monica, first of all, welcome again. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your role, how long you've been at Dodge Cox, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Yeah, this is my seventh year now at Dodge Cox. I actually, after a stint in health in technology, I moved into financials back in early 2000. I was asked to do a lot of data analytics, both in terms of looking at market data as well as looking at, client retention, client data, and this build my first performance attribution system to look at how investment funds are doing and what's driving the performance. I was very successful in that and was asked to take on basically managing hundreds of billions of dollars and scaling using technology play. And since then, have not turned around and been in the financial services, fintech, technology space ever since. In Dart& Cox, I think I was hired here to kind of do something similar, which was bring in some of the new capabilities from a technology perspective that we see now offered with the cloud, the generative AI, and all of these data analytics and solutions, so we can just continue to hone in on the performance of our funds.
So obviously, the conversation as of late in IT organizations like yours has been a lot about AI. So let's just dive right into it. You've been managing technology for a number of years, things like cloud and other new technologies. How do you see generative AI as different? And how much priority do you think we should be putting on this?
I think we are looking at an inflection point from a technology perspective. I think, Emil, you and I have been around for a long time, saw the internet, saw the mobile, we saw the crypto. I think this is another inflection point with generative AI. It's not new, it's been around for a while. I think
Yep.
the chat GPTs of the world just made it so accessible to everybody that we're all now able to dabble with it and experiment with it. I think 2023, most of us were experimenting and trying little projects to see what capabilities we see. So
Mhm.
I think the promise of the Gen AI is very real. You can do things that you couldn't do earlier. In some senses, democratize technology to the entire workflow. You
Yep.
don't need to be a technological person to be able to do a lot more what you could do earlier, and that's powerful by itself. I think when we come to ranking about it, is we have to think about it just like we think about all other projects as to what's the value we want to add,
Mm.
where we want to apply it, and the range of projects are varied and many, as one would expect. Do you apply it? I mean, as you were introducing that in Cox, our core is performance of a fund. So that's one bucket of projects that one
Mm.
could be thinking about. Do you apply it to looking at investment data, looking at alpha generation, looking at the benchmark data and other market data providers and applying that? The second bucket would be clients, right? Are we retaining our clients well? Are we supporting them well? Are we answering their questions quickly enough? And the tooling all around that. And the third bucket is internal productivity, right? Do
Mm.
you think
Mm.
about productivity from the perspective of, pre-market commentary or a pre-draft of market commentary, or be it in the form of, writing code, testing, or in the form of looking at disclosures or client IMAs and what have we committed to our clients. So there's
Mm.
so much value one can add in all these different domains. So the question we're all dealing with is where to start and how to prioritize all of these different applicability.
Well, what you just described there is sort of an amazing broad set of opportunities in a sense. And so do you see it that broad, meaning that it would have impact across both internal customer sales, marketing opportunities? I mean, is it going to be that impactful across many different organizations or elements of your organization, do you think?
I definitely think so. In some sense, I'm a technologist. I love innovation. So there's bias there itself in my own
Yes.
perspective, right? But to that point, I do think so. I know there's a lot of hype in the
Mhm.
near term, but in the long term, there's more of an underhype in some sense. When
Yeah.
you think about long term, you think about all the vendors across the spectrum from tech stack to data to analytics, almost anybody and everybody is going to be applying GenAI in different capacities. And the goal is going to be how do we harness it all together and bring it back to do what we are trying to do in each of our respective businesses.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned a couple things around value and impact to the business, but can you talk about how you think about quantifying things? So, I mean, obviously, new technology always has to be justified. There's sort of the ROI, benefits analysis. You've got many different use cases that you roughly sort of described, but how will you choose one over another? What sort of metric guidance would you give another CTO in another organization, or as you talk to people?
Yeah, I think just like when we are prioritizing all other projects, that's always a complex
Mhm.
model there itself. How to prioritize, how do you invest, and where to deploy your resources. It's no different here. I think there are lots of parameters to look into. There is this savings that you can see in time. So how do
Yep.
you quantify those savings? And those savings in time also would be in the form of, where are you going to redeploy that time save? Is it going to
Hmm.
be more towards strategy? Is it more towards driving revenue? Is it more towards products? So that matters as well. So it comes down to who is going to get the value out of it. The
Hmm.
second piece also is around the return on investment. What is it going to build this model? What is it going to take to maintain them, both from a compute, resource, storage
Yeah.
perspective? And then when to expect the return on investment? Is it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? There are some use cases like, the chatbot in the help desk. Those use cases, definitely we would expect a faster return on investment.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
then there are others like product, right? Looking at it for to how the product evolution should happen. One would expect a longer duration to see
Yeah.
the effect of some of that. The third piece is going to be the return on the experience.
Mhm.
We should definitely see employees being able to spend less time doing mundane tasks in the big picture and being able to spend more time doing creative, innovative things, strategic things. So we should expect to see improvement in employee satisfaction, stakeholder satisfaction over time. So it's a complex mix, and you have to look at all of these together to figure how do you maximize the value.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the effort of cost analysis that includes the operational long-term costs. And I'm thinking that AI, with a lot of new technology, you're having to teach, maybe learn both new products, new technologies, new services. Maybe you're building new teams and resources. So does this bring a different level of sort of quandary around buying technology that's prepackaged versus building your own because you have customer requirements? And how do you weigh those two? The buy versus build sort of equation.
Yeah, I think, Emil, you and I have talked about this in the past as well. This is a complex problem to begin with. All our vendors and key strategic partners are investing in this space, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit, we're trying to see where are they going, what will they be able to offer. The
Hmm.
second component is around data. They're all building these capabilities on the data they own, the data they have access to.
Hmm.
And so we are seeing market data providers, we are seeing order management systems like the BlackRock, the State Street CRD, all of them building in different capacities. So what our goal here is to see what our vendors are going to provide. And then the question is we have our own data as well. What do we do with that Dart and Cox generated data? Should that be provided to one of a strategic partner and
Hmm.
have them build on it? Should we be applying these third-party LLMs and doing some of that analysis?
Right.
Or even, I've talked about this concept of a copilot of copilots, right? All our
Yes.
vendors are
Yes.
building their own copilots, and are we
Yeah.
expected to integrate all of those copilots together with a third copilot, another layer of copilot? So it's a little bit, I think, unclear yet. Most of us are relying on our strategic partners, and most of us are relying and leaning in on these vendor ecosystem. But would it fully solve for it, or would it be a combination of adding third-party LLMs to this? It's still a
Yes.
bit unclear. And then the last piece also is this whole thing around hallucination, false output, that's very real as well. So
Yeah.
we also have to look at the output coming out from all of our vendors and strategic partners as to how well does it work. At the
Mm,
end of the day, we are still are held accountable to our shareholders and clients. And so from that lens, also looking at it from that perspective of the
mm,
how accurate is what we are seeing.
yeah. So that then brings me to the next question, which is what are some of the gaps and or maybe issues? And I think of this not just as a technology problem, because there seems to be plenty of investments happening with new technology, both your existing vendors and maybe a whole other set of new inventions that are coming out of the investment world from us on the venture side. But also there's people gaps and process and skill development. So how do you think about sort of the broader landscape of what are the gaps and issues that are perhaps the roadblocks for you as CTO to deploy things today?
Yeah, I think we are already seeing this focus back on data. I mean, we've always
Mm,
had data governance, data quality in the works for a bit. I think the importance of data has become more real now because because it's much
yep,
easier to do some of this generative AI stuff. So focus on that is important. Understanding your data, having it in the right way so the Gen AI tools can leverage it well. The second is around security. The risk of the data loss is real. So how do you ensure that the contract with vendors kind of cover and protect for that data? The data is not going to be used for anything else, whether it will be trained or not trained by these LLMs. All of that is real as well. And then the risk of hallucination, as I was mentioning earlier, how do you ensure the accuracy around this? That's one of the questions I've been wondering. Are we going to see, just like we have cybersecurity insurance, are we going to see more insurance providers providing protection
yeah,
around losses
yeah,
around hallucination? I know there's some tea leaves around that we're seeing. And the so you also made a good point around the human side of it. There is this piece that we are going to see more of these AI operationalization needing, the management layer, the leadership layer. Everybody needs to understand this. So what are the shifts in the skill set needed, be it in terms of education or be it in terms of even bringing some of these tools? The other piece is also how to try this. You want to try small, see the successes from it, and then expand. So how do you bring that growth mindset into this as well? Learn from the lessons, seeing where it's working, where it's not working, what is the right level of accuracy you want, and what is
yeah.
not good enough. So there is just still a lot of figuring out to be done, and the challenges kind of led with this figuring out. I think there's still a lot to be done. And the last piece is regulation. I mean, that's another one. We saw last
Sure.
year the EU regulation, our
Right.
Biden regulation, as well as the India Digital Act, the Canada Act, and it's a little bit still trying to figure out where is it all going to land.
Right, right. And it does seem to evolve pretty fast here. One of the big topics that keeps coming up around regulatory issues, perhaps, is responsible AI. And perhaps there's data governance that makes up part of that. You mentioned risk and leakage and hallucinations that could create risk and things. But how do you think about responsible AI? I think it's a broader topic, maybe than just data governance alone, for sure.
Yeah, I think that we all have to focus on it significantly, both from the perspective of the biases in the data is being trained on, how much can you rely on the quality of it. When
Mm,
you think about applicability, say in recruiting, that's an area of an example where you have to just be so careful that there is no biases that is introducing. The second piece also is around looking at the IP infringement side of
mm,
it.
mm.
These tools are training on it. I think the verdict is still a little unclear on where some of this will go. I mean, is training on publicly available data, is that good, not good? And how do we as firms think about it to make sure
Mm.
we're not negatively impacted? I think that 2024, we're going to see a lot more of that clarity, hopefully evolve and emerge
Yes.
and see how to think about all of these different concerns and considerations.
So, in closing, I wonder if you would give advice or how you think about this market opportunity. You said high priority. We ought to think about it holistically from a value standpoint. But let's say you're standing in front of a large audience. I don't know, your CTO, your board, your leadership team. How would you tell them to think about the AI market right now?
Yeah, I think the AI market, we are at a big inflection point at the end of the day. I think AI has democratized IT across the workforce. And that is powerful by itself.
Yes.
The question now comes down to how do we harness this power, be it in the technology sector. I think you and I talked in the past about what we would see in the infrastructure layer, the cloud layer, as well as looking at the data layer. We should expect to see Gen AI to be embedded in every aspect of everything we do, be
Wow.
it from the consumer side to investment side to be a data side. I can't imagine a facet where we would not expect to see this. The question is more around timing, how much to expect in 24 and how much to expect by 27. That is still a little bit TBD. And also these regulations, the learnings we're all going to
Yeah.
have is going to play a role on it. I think we have already, I don't see there's any going back. It's more about how far will this take us? I mean, and how
Yes.
much of the promise sort of
That's awesome.
forecast.
I love the bullishness that you have, and even the timeline is pretty bullish. Even, I mean, the furthest out date you just offered was 2027, which to me is not that far out. So,
Exactly.
so Monica, thank you so much for being our special guest today for the CXO podcast series here at Mayfield. So, my special guest today, Monica Khurana. Today is the CTO at Dodge and Cox, an amazing firm, amazing background. Thank you so much for spending time and your insights with us here today.
Thank you, Ganu, for having me. I really appreciated this. Thank you.